All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're cracking open the essential toolkit for any project manager, the solicitation documents. We're going to break down the RFP, RFQ, and IFB so you can be sure you're picking the right strategy every single time. This is a really high-stakes decision. If you pick the wrong document, you could end up with bids that are all over the place, crazy prices, or worse, a partner who just can't deliver. So how do you get it right? Well, that's exactly what we're here to solve. Okay, let's get into our first big idea here. It is so easy to think of these documents as just, administrative paperwork, but that is a huge mistake. These are your strategic gateway to the entire marketplace. This is how you formally tell the world what your project needs. So think about it this way. Before you can even ask for anything, you've got to figure out how you're going to pay for it. That's your contract type. Fixed price, cost reimbursable, you name it. That sets the financial rules. The solicitation document, then, is the vehicle that carries that strategy out to the sellers. They have to be perfectly in sync. Now we are getting to the absolute heart of the matter. Seriously, if you get this one concept, you will have this whole procurement thing down. It all boils down to one single fundamental question. So here's the bottom line. What information is the most critical for you to get? If you already know exactly what you need, the solution is known. Then it's all about one thing: price. You're just shopping around. But if you have a problem and you need an expert to figure out the how, well, then you're buying a solution, not a product. Okay, so with that core logic locked in, let's crack open the Project Manager's Toolkit and take a look at the three main instruments you'll be working with. First up, the RFB, the Request for Proposal. This is your go-to for the complex stuff. You use an RFP when you're not just buying a thing, you're buying brains. You're basically asking the market, hey, here's our problem, how would you solve it? You're focused on their ideas, their methodology, their expertise. Next, we've got the RFQ, or Request for Quotation. Now this is all about speed and efficiency. You use an RFQ for standard, off-the-shelf stuff or really well-defined work. Think commodities. You know exactly what you want, so you're just asking how much per item and how fast can I get it. And finally, there's the Invitation for Bid, or IFB. This is kind of like an RFQ, but it's usually a bit more formal and for a bigger, more complete scope of work. You see this a lot in government work and big construction projects. Basically, anywhere you have a super detailed blueprint and you just need someone to build exactly that. Usually, the lowest qualified bid wins. All right, theory is one thing, but let's see how this plays out in the real world. We're going to apply these tools to our high-rise office tower case study. This is where it all clicks. And this is where it gets really interesting, because you can see how one single project needs totally different tools. For the structural steel, hey, the specs are universal. There's no innovation needed. So we send out an RFQ to get the best price. But for the building's smart AI system, we know what we want it to do, but we have no idea what the best technology is to get there. That absolutely calls for an RFP, so we can see different expert proposals. Okay, heads up for everyone studying for the PMP exam, this next bit is absolutely critical. We're going to dive into some key concepts and common traps that you really need to know for the test. First things first, let's talk about the RFI. And let's be super clear, an RFI is not a solicitation document, not at all. Think of it as market research. It's what you do before you're ready to buy. You're just gathering info, finding out who the players are, what the rough costs look like. It's for planning, not purchasing. And this table, it just lays out the trade-offs perfectly. Look, an RFP is a huge amount of work for everybody, buyer and seller. It can take weeks, even months. But what you get in return is flexibility, the ability to find a truly creative solution. On the other hand, an RFQ or IFB, super fast, low effort, but they only work if you know exactly what you want. You got to match the tool to the job. All right, here is a classic exam trap. I see people fall for this all the time. Don't just assume that an RFP automatically means a cost reimbursable contract. It can absolutely lead to a fixed price deal. Once a seller proposes a solution and you both agree on it, you can lock in a price. What the exam is really testing you on is the intent. What was your goal? Was it to choose a solution? That's an RFP. Was it to get the best price for a known item? That's an RFQ or IFB. So what's a bidder conference? Well, it all boils down to one word: fairness. You get every potential seller together in one room or on one call to go over the requirements. Why? Because if one person asks a question, everyone needs to hear that question and, more importantly, the answer. It guarantees that every single bid is based on the exact same set of information. It keeps the playing field level. And, none of this, the RFP, the RFQ, any of it, works if you don't have a solid procurement statement of work, the SOW. This thing is the absolute heart and soul of your request. It describes in detail what you need. If you ever get a bunch of bids back and they seem to be for totally different projects, the first place you should look for the problem is your SOW. I'm telling you, a vague SOW is the #1 reason procurements go off the rails. All right, so we've walked through the theory, we've hit those key exam insights. Now let's boil this all down to a super simple, practical model you can start using on your very next project. Here we go, it's just 3 steps. That's it. First, how mature is your solution? I mean, can you literally draw a picture of it on a whiteboard? If the answer is yes, you're probably leaning toward an RFQ. Second, how are you going to pick the winner? Is it all about the lowest price, or are you looking for the best expertise? And third, be honest about your timeline. A proper RFP process doesn't happen in a week. You need to plan for it months ahead. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of the core principles just to lock it all in. The RFI, that's for researching the market. The RFP, that's for asking sellers to propose a solution. The RFQ or IFB, that's when you just need a price. The foundation for all of it is the SOW. It defines the work. And the bidder conference, that keeps the whole process fair. Simple as that. So there you have it. You've mastered the art of asking, you sent out the perfect document, and now the proposals are rolling in. But the job's only half done. So the next huge question is, how do you sort through all of those responses and objectively pick the absolute best partner for your project? We'll dig into that next time.